YouTube to keep us alive then. Hey, and we're up.
Ah, we're alive. We're live. Okay, it happened.
Sometimes I feel like the two old guys in the Muppets, Stadler and Waldorf,
Oh,
uh, when they're just like, is the show over yet? Unfortunately, no.
unfortunately, no. Oh man,
I
those
love the
guys are
one
the best.
where he's like, this show is awful. How did we get here? Don't you remember? We entered a contest. We
We
lost.
lost. Oh
Good.
man,
Yeah,
the Muppets. We
the
need. We need.
Muppets.
We need
Speaking of
more.
Muppets,
Yeah. What? What?
let's talk about some of these people in the administration. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, it's kind of that one writes itself.
Yeah, it really does, man. It really does. But well, you were a big fan of this whole regime change. How you feeling? How's your assessment looking?
So for me, it's still too early. Like, I wasn't really expecting the effects of any change for about a year. So
Surprise!
yeah, well, I think Trump himself is gonna. I think did in fact they registered, and Rasmussen register like a 10-point swing against his approval level, something like that. And Rasmussen's very. I mean, some people accuse them of being right wing because like they were predicting a Trump win all last year. It
Right,
turns out, well, he won in exactly the ratio they said, so maybe they're not right wing after all.
right.
Um, but yeah,
They
they're
get a
showing.
bad rap. Just anybody that was showing Trump any love on those polls, it was like, oh, you must be a
Shill or
right wing
something.
conspiracy theory or whatever. It's like, well, actually, no, we're just polling people.
Just for polling, yeah, that's what people are
Yeah,
telling us. So
yeah.
there you go. Um, but yeah, the gosh, I think yeah, it was like a 7-point disapproval swing. So it was +2, and now it's -5. So net
Hmm.
disapproval, and probably it has to do with I don't know what to call it, tariff chaos. Um, so there was one. So here's kind of a funny one. I was on, uh, as you know, I'm an audiophile. I love my
Yeah,
audio,
yeah,
and
yep.
some of the items get very expensive. So like, here's one. Here's a set of headphones that I picked up at a trade show. These are made by a company called Fat Frequency. They're in Singapore. These are unbelievable. You would love these. You love bass, right?
I love him already.
Yeah, this is a bass lover's dream right here. They're made in
Okay.
Singapore. There's used to be under the de minimis, so you could get it shipped here. No tariffs because it's too small. It's just an
Yep.
individual package. You purchased it point A to point B. Now, this one over here, I'm just show and tell. Um, this one right here is, you would not like this one. This is the Eiffel Acoustics. This is the Cantor, and these are made in China.
Love the
And the
look of
reason
him though.
they're gorgeous. The reason you wouldn't like them is because they're so detailed that they will reveal every flaw in a recording.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, and it turns out most
Yeah, I don't
things.
want that. I want mine glossed over. I want it
Yeah,
to just
no, this
sound
one does not do
terrific.
that. This is like, oh man, the singer is too close to the microphone. Like, yeah, you
Oh
can
wow.
you can hear it with these. These are made in China, which means now if you purchase them directly from the company, which you used to be able to do. In fact, I did. I've got these direct from them, shipped straight there from their factory. Now you would pay double on import.
Hmm.
And one person bought himself an amplifier from a company in China a week ago or 2 weeks ago, before all this stuff happened, and had it shipped. They shipped it 2 days ago, like super fast shipping. Once it was a made to order item. So
Yep.
they completed it, handmade. It's a $1,000 amplifier, which is very low priced for what it is. That's a bargain. But now,
Now
uh,
it's a $2,000 amplifier.
well, well, so it's sitting in a warehouse and he got a notification from, I think it's FedEx, that said the customs and duty is needs to be paid on it, and for him to have it released to him so that it can be delivered is $1,400.
Wow.
So it's a $1,000 amplifier that he paid for weeks ago,
Wow. Yeah.
and now $1,400. Now he can't return it because it's a custom made item, but he can't accept duty on it either. So
Why is that his risk in this case? Wouldn't the shipper just be liable for that, or the third party, whoever he bought it from?
I mean, that's in between him and the shipper. In between,
Yeah.
yeah. So like, so I bought something. I bought a shocker, a pair of headphones, from a Singaporean company.
Reminds me
Uh,
of all those what was that movie, War Dogs? Remember when they were trying to
oh yeah,
ship the weapons back and forth, and
yeah,
well, let's get this truck driver and drive him to Baghdad, right? Yeah,
yeah. If he's over there, then it's over. So I
yeah.
bought a pair of headphones from a Singaporean company, and they just shipped it. It actually got shipping notification on it, but I checked, and the shipping. And let me just, I want to make sure I get this right. I think the shipment is coming from China, which means the Singaporean company manufactured it and shipped it from China. In which case, I have no idea if I'm actually going to get it. Like, I
You're
don't know
right.
if it's going to show up. I don't know if I'm going to get a notification from the shipper saying that I need to pay 140% of its value. And here, I have no clue. And if this is happening to me, so like Amazon, a bunch of they've stopped orders that had already been placed on, because a lot of their stuff is manufactured in China. And so
Hmm.
it's like, yeah, that order that we get the sent, we actually don't want that anymore. And they're like, well, we already we already have, like, it's already made. Like, we're boxing it up. It's like, yeah, don't bother sending it. We don't need it. And so like those companies are now kind of on the hook for all this stuff. So it's kind of a mess. It's a giant mess.
Kind of a mess. Well, and
Yeah,
it has. I mean, we were actually, me and a couple buddies were looking at buying a. There was this company that manufactured a lot of its products in China, sold online, and we liked it. We were thinking about buying it, and we were literally this close to putting in an offer on it, line up financing, putting an offer in. And then the rumors that this was coming came out. So we, of course, we were initially using it as leverage in the deal, like, oh, let's see if we can work and they were very open to it. They're like, oh yeah, and then of course when the tariffs hit, I was like, guys, hold on,
we got it. We got to bail.
we gotta press pause here,
Yeah,
because it's too. And the thing is, like, I think the thing that the markets hate the most is unpredictability. I mean,
sure.
that's um, it's whatever the policy is. But I mean, at least there's some range of predictability. And I've been listening to a lot of different podcasts and news stories and stuff. It seems like most of the economists, whoever is asked to speak on this stuff, almost universally negative, or at the very least, badly botched rollout, let's say.
Hmm.
Um, and then there's a good counter argument to be made on uh, the need for us to reset our global supply chains, period, not just vis-a-vis China, but period. In the wake of COVID, you kind of realize, gosh, we just don't make anything here, and
Nothing.
so much nothing, and so much of the stuff. I mean, we're just like, I mean, from pharmaceuticals to I mean, everything, and then when you realize, gosh, like, yeah, all the supply chain snarls that happened because of COVID, and then you multiply that by what's going on with the Panama Canal right now, and all this other kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, there's a very valid argument to be made that, hey, we need to reset. Take away yeah, the argument that I've been making for a long time, that we need to look out for American workers and things like that, which a little bit more protectionist policies would be beneficial there. Um, but I mean, it's funny. There's all these conversations going on at once. One conversation is the American workers and wages and things like that, which obviously would be helped by bolstering the manufacturing sector, or trying to help
Hmm.
it come back in some way. There's the conversation about our lack of manufacturing, capacity, in the country. There's the conversation about China as a bad actor in the WTO. That like, okay, look, we invited you into the WTO, and what was that? That was a 90 something.
Yeah,
Um,
it's been
yeah.
20 some odd years,
So
almost
okay,
30,
so
I
we
think.
almost there. Yeah, we invited you into the WTO, which gave you access to the world trading market. But then part of that is, respect for IP, all this other kind of stuff. I mean, like, Kevin O'Leary was on, from Shark Tank, was talking about
Oh
this
yeah.
on CNBC a few days ago. He's like, look,
Oh, he was livid. He was like,
yeah, he's
"Oh, that's not even enough. We need more."
not even 400%. He's like, yeah, we want 400. And yeah, 400% tariff because hey, look, you guys cannot just be. I don't know if you've seen the YouTube clip of the Chinese guy they interviewed, and just the guy on the street in New York or whatever. Like, hey, do you have a
Oh,
message for President Trump for China? He's like, he's like, don't. He goes
oh yeah,
something. Don't trust them. They are asshole. China
yeah,
is asshole. Yeah.
yeah. Don't
And
trust him.
but yeah, but it's like they do they really are screwing everybody over and really pushing people around, artificially their currency, all this different stuff. And it's like, okay, look, I mean, I mean, at some point, somebody has to, stand up to them and say, look, you just can't do this anymore. We have, in the United States, we're in a good position to do that. And so, I mean, right now, what is our economy? Our GDP is a quarter of the world's
Yeah,
consumer
30
market,
30% or something like that. Yeah.
30%. So I mean, like, okay, well, we're well positioned to do what's being done.
Mhm.
The question is, where does that take us? How does it feel in these few years of adjustment? Um, and then there's this other conversation of, look, I mean, what makes the United States such a great market and such a reliable, the reason we have the reserve currency and all this other kind of stuff is that because of the checks and balances that we have in our system. And because Trump he's signed all these declarations declaring all these emergencies and given himself basically taken all this power that usually, a president, the reason a president has never done, he keeps talking about that. Oh, no president's ever done this. No, 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 nobody else would do this. Well, nobody else has manufactured a fake crisis and a declared an emergency and then
Yeah.
usurp power. Congress
Yeah.
is the only one that has the ability to lay in attacks like this. So it's I mean, it'll be interesting to see that get adjudicated. But it is, I was talking to a friend of mine. I was like, it's a very dangerous place when, I mean, if you rewind 500 years, and when the world was run by, not even 500 years, a couple hundred years, where you've got the King of Spain, King of England, all these
Okay, okay,
different
okay.
kings, right?
Gotcha.
And and some king somewhere crooks his fingers like this, and the markets go haywire because we're just not doing business with them anymore, and like uh, that's kind of what you have here. You've got this guy that nobody really, Trump. Nobody really. I mean, let's say that he's playing 4D chess or whatever some people like to say. I don't. I've never seen the evidence of that. I don't believe it. But let's pretend it's true. It's still like it is. It is absolute. The whiplash that's being created here is not a doesn't pretend well for like how are you if I'm running a here I am, a small guy thinking about buying a very small company, and it disrupts my plans of buying that company.
Mhm.
Imagine these companies that have $1 billion supply chains that are like truly. I mean,
Yeah.
how do you even deal with the
Oh,
situation?
yeah. So I think that aspect of it, yeah, like, and when you said maybe a couple years of disruption, um, I think that's probably a fair estimate. I tend to think capital markets are a little more resilient than that, and we're looking at maybe, well, so here's kind of my take on this whole thing. So the emergency power stuff, I think it's been kind of, like the frog boiling situation. So when when China first starts doing this stuff, they first get in. They're not from the very beginning. They're not following any of the rules. Everyone's like, well, this is an impoverished country, and we're trying to get them out of communism and maybe some economic freedom, gives them political freedom. Everywhere else, those two have been linked. And so we think, okay, we can turn a blind eye, and what difference does it make anyway? And then as this goes on further and further and further and further, and now it's like the frog boiling. It's like, okay, well, the bubbles are, I mean, you're starting to
Bro,
feel the bubbles.
you've got cancer now.
Yeah,
Like,
that's like at
yeah.
some point, you got to jump out of this pot,
Yeah.
or get cooked. And it's like,
Right.
which moment is it that we declared now is the time? It's like, well, it was the time, years ago, and now we're finally doing it. And now instead of being like, all right, we're going to have a little bit of disruption here and you guys need to stay in your lane. Instead, now it's like ripping the Band-Aid off, but it's not even like a Band-Aid. It's like a whole body bandage that we're just going to, and like, oh, this is going to be very painful. I think the calculation, and not just Trump, but from his team, I think the calculation is something like this. Biden left us with a recession. I think, and I've shared some of the info with you and some of the on the family politics kind of discussion, that a lot of like the economic numbers coming out of the Biden White House were constantly being revised down. So they would put
Yep.
something out, they would time something like, oh look, jobs are up, and then a month later, numbers down, and all of the gains would be wiped out in revisions. It's not like, well, they came down. It's like, well, they were never there. They were
Right.
misreported on purpose. And so I think the Trump team thinks, maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong, that we are actually in a recession. We are in a real recession right now, but that because of the way that things have been reported, it's been visible to the people who have been living paycheck to paycheck. They know. The people that are trying to find jobs, they know. But everybody else hasn't gotten the memo yet. you know. So since we're in a recession, why not do it now? Because then it's not like, oh my gosh, you've triggered a recession. Everything was going great and now we're in a recession. It's like, no. If we tear the Band-Aid off now, then the recession's already here. And so we can build our way out of the recession that we're already in. It's kind of no cost, or there's some cost, some political cost as people get the message, but it's not as big of a cost as it would be if this was, better times or whatever. So I think that's why they've gone full scorched earth on some of this stuff. That's the calculation. Like I said, I don't know that they're right. This is just my guess as to their thought process. So
You could be right. I thought it was interesting. Yesterday when he pulled the tariffs back except for China, right? It was like, hey, we're gonna, since China's showing us no respect. That tweet was hysterical. Thank
he
you for
didn't
your
come kiss
attention
my
to this
ring.
matter. Yeah, they didn't come, exactly. Well, he was, then he's bragging like a couple days ago. I mean, everybody around the world is calling you kissing my ass. I mean, it's amazing, and it's
Well,
like,
as far as good news, this is one of the things that made me realize that this is not going to be as bad. Because when it first rolls out like this giant package and like everybody's tariffed, even like, island out in the middle of nowhere, like,
it's got
and
no people on it. Yeah,
60% for you too, like,
yeah, tariff those penguins.
well, so like for the tech industry, which is where, a lot of stuff is being made overseas. And people are saying, oh, well, China is the big one. Well, China is no longer, I mean, they are for a lot of stuff, but for a lot of the tech industry, China is now too expensive for their labor costs. So labor costs in America for skilled labor is like $21 an hour. In Germany, it's 25, 26. In China, it's 7, I think, or 8. But in Vietnam and Thailand, it's 4.
Mm-hmm.
So people are putting their new they're not putting their new factories in China. They're
But
putting
also a lot of because during the first Trump term, when he slapped those tariffs on China to begin with, a lot of the tech CEOs, they moved their manufacturing to Vietnam
Yep.
and Cambodia specifically because of that.
Yep.
And so,
well, and that's paid off handsomely because number one, you've got lower labor costs. Number two, you've got governments that are much more willing to play ball with you. It's not like, oh,
right,
yes, we will allow you to be here and we're going to like use your stuff to build our own industry. It's like, no, employ our people. This is cool. Like
yeah, right,
we're friends, So
right,
so when Vietnam, the first day that the tariffs were announced, they came and were like, "Hey, let's cut a deal." And Trump tweeted out something about that, like, "Oh, Vietnam is here, and we're gonna have a beautiful deal, beautiful deal." I was like, "Okay, this is not about tariffing everything. This is about singling out China."
Hmm.
kind of like making an example of them specifically. But
Yeah.
it's like once the Vietnam thing came in, then it was like, oh, this is going to be the first domino, and then all of these other very low labor cost countries where things are getting outsourced, they're going to all make similar deals, and we'll be looking at stuff like 10%, 12% tariffs, or whatever, which is not going to be, may not even be felt at the consumer level. It'll be felt at the supply chain level, so that like if you're a procurement manager, it might make your day different, but as in terms of someone
Hmm.
buying something from the store, that they may not even notice, because that 10% on whatever components came from Thailand is going to turn into like 2%. It'll just get swallowed up by whatever other inflationary things are going on.
Yeah.
So
Interesting. Did
yeah.
you hear that? Did you hear China? They announced the immediate restriction of imported American films.
Yeah.
And they asked Trump, like, "Hey, what's your reaction to this?" And Trump goes, "Well, I think I've heard of worse things." The entire room like burst out laughing.
Well, and that's been one of the big criticisms of Hollywood, is that they have stopped trying to make like good movies for the American audience, and they're trying
Right?
to
They're
make
just
like
making it.
lowest common denominator stuff that will play in all markets. And turns out the Chinese market wants more or less opposite things than what the American market wants. So it's kind of like, in order to please both, so all of your big budget films basically
Oh,
have to
that's
have
why
no
they all suck. Oh,
they have to
okay.
basically have no message. You have to have like there's all sorts of like silly things about it to try to avoid not try to avoid upsetting somebody in one of the two major markets. So it's like, oh, if China's not playing our films anymore, maybe we'll have more artistic integrity than the films we do make. Who knows?
That'd be great.
One
Let's
can only
go.
hope. Um, I don't know. It'll be interesting. Do you have any predictions for what will happen with that? Do you think China backs down? Do you think they're like, "Yep, we're getting a divorce. China and the U.S. That's it. We're no longer trading partners."
Uh, I don't know about that. I think there needs to be some way of allowing them to save face. Uh,
Because that doesn't look like it's possible right now.
with this crowd, I mean, very unlikely. I mean, it seems like everybody in the administration, everybody on the team has a free hand to just bash, bash China. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how you get there. Yeah, I don't know. I don't. It's hard for me to even make predictions anymore. I used to be like, this one's not going to work. But I mean, it's hard. It's really hard to say. It's interesting to me to see the different framing that's going on. Like in right wing media, it's like you know, uh, Europeans cave to Trump demands, right? And Trump crushes another, 72 nations come to kiss the ring and blah blah blah.
God
And then on the
Emperor of the United States.
right, right, and then on the the national press, major press, whatever you want to call it, it's like Trump does 180 on tariffs, but folds to Republican lawmaker, which there has been a lot of Republican lawmaker pressure.
Mhm.
Ironically, I haven't seen. I mean, you hear one thing I listen for is like, what are people saying? Like, what are regular people saying?
Mhm.
And like, because every talking head can have whatever opinion they want, but like,
Sure.
what do people say? And by and large, um, and this is just from like, talking to different people online, on the phone, whatever, just like, hey, what do you think? How do you feel? Blah blah, whatever. And also just kind of watching. It seems like the people are kind of like giving him a pass on a lot of this stuff. Like, there's a lot of like blue collar kind of like good for him, you know. Really, even they had some man on the street thing the other day. They were talking to just they were in a black neighborhood, and these black guys were like that did you vote for Trump? No, I didn't, but I mean, hey, if he wins, we win, so go get him. I mean, it was kind of interesting.
Mhm.
Uh, Black men, I don't know, black women may be a different story, but I mean, in aggregate. But I don't know. It's interesting to me. I think, I was talking to a friend of mine about who's like really ultra MAGA, and he
Ultra
he
MAGA.
was
I remember when they tried to make that into term of abuse during the
Biden,
during the
what
campaign. It's like, oh, it's ultra MAGA, and
ultra MAGA? Yeah,
all the MAGA people are like, "That's me. I'm ultra.
ultra MAGA.
I
Yeah,
will
it's dude, you
accept this
can't.
title." Yeah.
But he was just like he was like yeah, some people just defend everything, and
Sure.
they
Yeah.
defend everything, and it doesn't matter what. And that was very much like where he was coming. He was like, I mean, just it doesn't matter what Trump could come out tomorrow and say that we're zero tariffs on everybody. Blah blah. Blah. I told you, the man's a genius. Like it just he does. There's no like
Mhm.
underlying philosophical anything there with this guy. But
Everything
but then
just
I have
can't go
other friends
wrong.
but then I have other friends who, like, let's say, are late to the table, but they became Trump supporters or MAGA supporters either because of RFK or because of the no war or because of those kind of positions that kind of
Yeah.
gelled in this Trump 2.0 as people are calling it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a lot of disappointment, I think, on a couple of levels with a
Interesting.
lot of those people. So, and I don't know whether you've been following this or you have any thoughts on it, but uh, so people, and I got this, a couple of these pointed out to me. I was like, dude, that's interesting. Because that wasn't part of what was in my frequency. I wasn't paying attention to it, but maybe you'll have some thoughts on this. So one of the conversations was okay about RFK specifically, right? RFK was going to come in here and he was going to upend, he's going to get rid of the CDC, he's going to upend all these different things, and and since he's been in, he's announced a reorganization in partnership with Doge. They're going to cut down the number of departments. That's great. But then, it seems like the number one health concern that we have in America is anti-Semitism. Like if you watch his posts, it's bizarre that like
Mhm.
here's the Secretary of HHS and he thinks the number one thing he needs to be talking about is anti-Semitism. And there's a lot of talk about whether he actually has some sexual blackmail that's going on, like that they have files on him because there were rumors during the campaign that stuff was going on, and whether he's being literally controlled since he's like literally flip flopped on just a ton of stuff since he's taken over.
Hmm.
So I don't know if you've been watching, but anyway, that's something interesting to look at. Um, the other one was on, okay, well, we thought we were anti-war. We were going to, Trump was decrying the whole Yemen bombing and stuff like that when he was running, gets to be
Right.
president. Now it's like, yeah, let's go bomb Yemen again. Tulsi Gabbard, who's, as much of a peacenik as anybody I could think of to get that position recently. And yet, in the thread that was released, the Spygate or whatever, the Signalgate, text that we were talking about a couple of weeks ago,
Yeah.
talking about like, hey, we're going to bomb this apartment building, and everybody's like thumbs up and eggplant emojis and whatever else, like it's kind of a bizarre. I mean, but that's what they were talking about, and it's like, okay, well, this is that's interesting. Um, and then really the free speech things on whether it's on campus, and Glenn Greenwald's been talking about this, a bunch of other people, Dave Smith, about just how look. I mean, one reason we got behind you was because of this whole cancel culture and the whole like thought police and all this other kind of stuff. And now it's like, oh,
Mhm.
okay, well, I mean, they canceled or are attempting to cancel. Who's that mom that's on YouTube? The one that's got millions of views, Rachel, what Miss Rachel or something? She's the one that like sings the Elmo songs to whatever. There's a video of this family in Hamas, or in Hamas, sorry, in Gaza. Who?
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. 12? How many? 15? 13. There's a video of this family in Gaza, and
Uh-huh.
they're in the rubble basically, but somehow they still
Okay.
have internet. And it's a dad. He's got his phone, and he's
Okay.
playing one of the Miss Rachel videos. I think that's her name. I hope I'm not misquoting that. To his kid, and they're singing along the Elmo songs in the middle of this rubble or whatever. And it's kind of just a touching video or whatever. Anyway, and so then she kind of got started talking about like she'd made a comment or two about like, gosh, this is just a shame that these children are dying and da da da, and we really need to look at like, is there anything we can do to help the kids? Is all
Okay.
she said,
Okay.
and they came
Look
out
into
and
helping the kids.
that's it. And like, hey, this maybe needs to be notched up a little in our concern level, in terms of what's, pay attention to
Okay.
that element of it. And it just, she got all this different, you know, um, uh, I don't know what all the I wasn't following it super closely. I just saw like a quick snippet of it and then Googled it real quick and went and checked it out. But this is a very pro-Israel friendly administration apparently, which didn't. It should have occurred to us because of the Miriam Edelson donation at the very beginning of the campaign and everything. But it just, I mean, they are, dude. If you speak out against Israel at all, like you're anti-Semitic, you hate Jews, blah blah blah. That's it, and we're gonna cancel you for your anti-Semitic, viewpoint. Which I think so people are disappointed about that as well. So, but at the end of the day, I mean, you can't have everything. So, but I don't know what if your thoughts are on any of those.
You can't have everything.
Can't have everything. Where would you put it? I mean,
yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned those. Yeah, I mean, so the HHS one with Kennedy. So this is going to sound really funny, but it sort of reminds me of when we were kind of in peak woke, and everything was like, I mean, I don't even know how to describe the environment that we were all in, but basically like everything, just you couldn't go anywhere without it just being thrown in your face, some LGBTQ or new feminism or whatever, just everywhere.
Yeah.
And we used to see stuff from people who would be in charge of health services kind of thing, saying, well, back when COVID was going on, and they said, well, shouldn't we tell people not to go riot in the streets because we're in the middle of a global pandemic and they're going to be putting people's lives at risk because they're out, congregating in mass. And I said, oh no, we should not do that because the bigger public health risk is racism.
Right.
And so like as part of the CDC, then we need to put out these statements to show that actually, yes, COVID is a problem. And if you're not wearing a mask, then you're worse than Hitler. But also the real problem is that we're not sufficiently anti-racist. And
right.
That's killing people.
Or it's like this, like we need to go find weapons of mass destruction. And it's like, oh, actually, no, we're the weapons of mass destruction because of our abuse of the environment, and whatever. Yeah, I get.
So it's like, okay, we're gonna, what's the biggest public health crisis? Like, well, back when you were running, it was obesity epidemic, problems with heart disease, the massive rise of diabetes, especially among children, and so on. And so it's like, I want to see some movement on that stuff. I don't want to see a statement about, well, the real health crisis is people's hateful attitudes.
Right.
Like, no.
Well, so here's this story here. So,
oh no,
is RFK being blackmailed and under blackmail by Israel due to compromising material from a couple decades ago,
23 years ago.
Yeah. So is it true? Yes, no.
What is it that they say that he did?
There's also an Epstein connection in there, which very suspiciously we haven't seen any Epstein files still. So,
I don't know. Whenever I see the blackmail stories, I tend to be pretty skeptical of those.
Sure.
And it's usually just because like the Epstein ones.
No, this is the one about the mom.
Okay.
So this is the pro-Israel group. This was just a couple days ago. Has asked the DOJ to investigate Miss Rachel over posts of Gaza children. Maybe she supports Hamas because she's concerned about these kids.
There's an old. I can't remember who said this. So if any of our audience at some point knows, please let me know. But there's this phrase that was like, if you ever, and I'm going to screw it up, but it's like, if you ever want to know who really runs a society or like who's really in charge or whatever, you just need to figure out who you're not allowed to criticize.
That's good.
Whatever that is. Right.
Yep.
And it just, whatever it is, right. What thing is like so sacred that you cannot
sacred cow.
Say anything negative about it.
Yep.
So like I would do some stuff. I would just as like social experiments on Facebook, I would see how many people I could get to unfollow me, unfriend me. So like I would make comments. This is kind of funny. I'm just such a troll. It's terrible. But I would make comments. People would say
You
something
are,
like,
man.
so people would be like, "Oh, I got this, beautiful set of flowers for my girlfriend or whatever." And I was like, "Oh, why? Why is she so special? Why does she need flowers?" And they'd be like, "Well, I mean, it's my woman." Or I was like, "Being a woman's not special. Like they're 51% of the population. You can't walk around
Right.
without running into one of them. Like why does yours require flowers? Does she give you flowers? Like what's the deal?" And people would just like unfriend me immediately because it was like, you can't say that stuff. You can't.
Right.
You can't say there's nothing special about being a woman. And it turns out now I was just ahead of my time because that is true now. The only thing that it takes to be a woman is just to believe you are. There's nothing special about it. So anyway, I'm glad to see those people have come back to friend me over this issue. Um, but like right now, it seems like we're in a kind of a weird place where it's like, the government of Israel, you can't criticize the government of Israel. Or it seems like you need to be really careful when you do. You need to put all sorts of disclaimers around it. You need to say things that would make it seem like, well, you're, really not even the government, but just this one policy, maybe they could rethink it. Not that they're doing anything wrong, this kind of stuff.
Right.
Like, it's very weird. It's very weird. Like, I love criticizing people's governments. It's part of my rights as an American. Like, I criticize European governments all the time. I mean, we've sat here and criticized the Chinese government, but it's like, that seems to be okay. We can criticize our own government. I can point my finger towards the state capitol and be like, screw all those people. They're all losers,
Right. No problem.
No problem. In fact, maybe it's part of my patriotic duty to do that on occasion.
There's an old
I don't know why.
There's an old Reagan joke. I don't know if you heard it, but he says, so the Reagan joke. So Reagan tells a joke about like, the Soviet and this American are talking, and the American says, "Well, here's the difference between America and the Soviet Union. In America we have freedom of speech, and so I can walk right into the president's office, put my finger on the president's desk, and say, 'Mr. Reagan, you are doing a terrible job, and nothing will happen to me.'" And the Soviet says, "Well, we have that here. I can do that." He goes, "You can't." He goes, "Sure. I can walk right into the premier's office, put my finger on his desk, and say, 'Mr. Premier, Mr. Reagan is doing a terrible job in America.'"
Yeah, we can do that.
We can do that. Yeah, we got that.
We can do that here.
We can do that here.
No,
Oh, man,
it
Mr.
is
Reagan.
kind of strange. It is kind of strange, and it's strange enough. I think it's like if you hear someone like Rubio saying something like that, if he put out a release saying the biggest issue we have right now in geopolitics is the global anti-Semitism or something like that. I mean,
at least it's more in his wheelhouse.
Yeah, he's voted on stuff like that before. He's made speeches on it. It's like,
that
okay,
wouldn't surprise me at all.
yeah, agree or disagree, whatever. That's
He's the Secretary of State.
position.
He's got that's in his. He's looking at that stuff all the time.
Yeah. Like fine. It is weird coming from HHS and coming from the person who seems to really campaign on a completely different issue. And some of it may be too, and this is one of those where it's like, I would love to see a report at the end of the year about like changes that have been made.
Mm-hmm.
So one of them that I know about is that Kennedy is writing waivers for state governments that want to ban ingredients. So it's like, so normally you can't do that as a state, and part of that is a gift to the large snack manufacturing companies don't want to have all these different recipes depending on the state. They want to just have one, and then they can manufacture and send it out. But that would require getting congressional approval on stuff or moving stuff at the FDA or whatever. And a lot of that, there's notice and comment periods. It takes sometimes years to get new stuff in place. And so state governments have been like, okay, well, we want to ban whatever, some dye that causes an issue or whatever, and they're not allowed to. And so he's saying he's writing waivers for them. It's like, yep, you're allowed to. You're allowed. You want to ban that? No problem. No problem. And so snack manufacturers are not happy about this.
Hmm.
And so they're kind of lobbying against him right now on some of this stuff. But it's like, okay, well, I mean, there is something that is interesting, right? Like
there's an area for, okay, so you're making at least some effort in
things progress.
in your zone.
Yeah, so
What,
that's just one thing, and there's probably many others, but it's like I don't know what they are because they're not terribly public. And right now, they're doing a really bad job of publicizing. Like all the publicization stuff has been from Doge on like, look at this insane program that we just defunded. And you're like,
kind of interesting though. You haven't heard much
cool.
from Doge the last couple of weeks.
It's been a little quieter.
Yeah, a little quiet. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
probably the reason for that is that the low hanging fruit has been plucked. That's the stuff coming out of USAID. The really interesting stuff would be the stuff in the Pentagon, and I think that they're not going to be allowed to do it. I think there's going to be a conflict within the administration on this, and the
Well,
military.
they've already the story a couple of days ago was that, or a few days ago, was that Trump is basically sidelining. Well, not sidelining. They're framing it differently, but the bottom line is, this stuff has to go through the cabinet secretaries now, and he's there to make recommendations. He doesn't even need to make them to the president anymore. Make them to the cabinet people, sort it out. I think they feel like they maybe have run. They've milked that PR train for whatever it's done, and they're moving on.
Well, and that may have also have come from him, where
Totally.
it's like, hey, I
don't
need
have time
to
for this.
be less visible for a little bit. I'm
Yeah.
also a CEO of companies,
Yeah, we're getting our ass kicked right now.
well, some of which are lobbying the government. So like
Right.
Starlink, for example, is trying to get permits. SpaceX is trying to get permits. And it's like, okay, I need to be less a part of government and more of a CEO.
Right.
So who knows? That's an interesting, but that's the thing is that like right now, I mean, they have like this giant military budget, like trillions, was it like trillions of dollars of military budget, biggest military budget ever.
Ever.
Yeah. So it's like
with a $500 billion or $500 million, pardon me, $500 million carve out. Not even $500 million.
Yeah. We're just gonna like a little bit.
Yeah. But man, we've cut $540 million from the yeah.
Well, this is one of those things. So there's always,
and it looks like we're about to go to war with Iran, which again, like if you look at, it's kind of interesting. Did you ever hear that?
That's not happening.
Did you ever hear that speech? It was not a speech. It was a talk that, you remember Wesley Clark back in the day? He's a General Wesley Clark. He was a big.
I don't remember the speech you're talking about. I remember the name.
So it wasn't a speech; it was a talk that he was. But he actually, and this is, you can go Google this. Paul Wolfowitz and these guys wrote this paper back in the '90s, and it was 7 wars, basically. And it was all funded by Israel. Was instead of so the theory from the '60s up through the '90s was, how do we get 25, 30 years of Israel trying to make peace with its neighbors, right? Or people coming and be, okay, we got these grievances here, and how can we move forward? 2-state solution, all this stuff, right? And I guess in the '90s, you had this counter move where Israel was like, actually, what if we just
what if
there's 7 countries here that are really the problem, and what if we just overthrew all 7 of those countries? And so they, it was a joint project. Wolfowitz wrote this paper on it, and it got all this, but it was 7 countries they were going to overthrow.
Okay.
And they wrote about this again back in the '90s. And so when 9/11 happened, it became kind of the impetus for, here's perfect timing to start doing this. And it was all these different countries. I can't remember. I have to look it up. With the list of them, but the very last one, Syria, Iraq, whatever. I have to pull it up, but basically the last one on the list is Iran, and so and the
someone's got to do it.
the thing. Hey, I mean, the thing is, and the thing is about what do you want to call it, deep state or whatever the case may be. Like these guys that are planning these multi art, like Rumsfeld, Cheney, all these guys were part of this thing, right?
Hmm.
Whatever you neocon alliance, whatever you want to call it,
Sure.
Crystal, all that. All these guys are on board with this thing, and yeah, it's amazing. It's like, okay, well, Trump is the first guy that's actually like vocally like that's not going to happen, blah, blah, blah. And now you've got this continued escalation here. So it's going to be. I tell you what, if Iran takes out that base, they have this little island that they built
Hmm.
in the, you know what I mean, in the Persian Gulf. I can't, Diego Garcia or something like that. And they've been talking about like, oh yeah, we could take that out. They're talking. Iran is talking about it. So I mean, they're
Yeah.
morons. They're going to bring it on themselves here. But at the end of the day, like these guys don't care about that. It's like, oh, perfect, playing right into our hands. And
Yeah.
Trump's just the guy that'd be like, screw you, you
Like
messed with
we
the
wanted
wrong,
peace, but they didn't. So
but you did it, and
yeah.
so here we go. That's right.
Well,
So,
I think this is an interesting lesson, and I'm definitely in the kind of wait and see camp. Although, like I said, there are some elements of this I'm not at all enthused about. Um, but if you remember what happened when,
so here it is. So this was
oh
in the 7 countries: Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran.
yeah,
And
Iran's last one,
yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
So if you remember in 2020, everybody on the Republican Party was tearing their hair out because like we lost everything. They said, we're done. What now? Well, how will we ever be able to fight back? And so the Republicans are just like totally, beside themselves over this stuff, especially after that special election loss in Georgia. I don't know if you remember, like everyone was just massively dispirited. And so when that runoff happened and the Democrats got the Senate as well as the House and now the presidency, and this was just horrible, from the Republican perspective.
Sure.
And I forget which program was that they asked a Republican strategist about this. It's like, now what? He says, how's it going to be? He said, oh, so this is the best news. It's like, this is what the party should want, is because they're going to screw it up. There's no one to stop them. And so then when the thing falls apart, because these guys are all fools, then you can go look and be like, hey, we told you, and you had it. You had everything. You didn't have to ask our permission to do anything. You did it all yourself. And so now they're setting themselves up for a loss. Like you need.
Well, the tables have turned in
Yeah,
that scenario. Yeah.
exactly. Well, it's because like
Yeah.
you need a really strong opposition in order to be able, first of all, to improve the quality of your governance. Uh, because like if you have people that are actually holding you accountable, then you tend to do a better job. So that's one thing. It's more likely that your legislation that gets passed through a bipartisan manner is more likely to be durable and so on. So you want that, but also you need someone to blame, right? You need to be able to say, "Oh, we would have done this, but the other party they screwed it up for us."
Right. Right.
So there's that cool podcast that you pointed me towards, the Ezra Klein guest appearance on.
Oh, we should talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, we can talk about it. Well, this is one of the points that he makes is he's going through like the completely bizarre funding process for some of the stuff from the Biden administration that is so onerous and so ridiculous that it just like no one can complete it. It costs all this money just to ask for the money. Like it costs money to ask for the money. And so it's like it's so ridiculous that like people just quit trying. And it's like now this was passed by Democrat
This is by
House
design.
and
Yeah.
Senate, signed in by Democrat president, and then administered by a Democrat executive branch. And it's like, and this is what they produce. And so it's like, yeah, they're going to screw it because they're fools. Now, we may be walking into the exact same situation where it's like, oh, you've got the House and the Senate and the presidency. What are you going to do with that? And it's like, well, it may turn out that you do nothing or you do a bunch of really stupid things because yet again, the only people that get voted into office are truly the fools. So we'll see. It's still early. Like it seems really odd to me in the beginning of April to talk about the demise of an administration that just got got sworn in
Oh,
like 9
yeah.
weeks ago or whatever.
I'm
So
not talking about that, but I am curious. Like, it's very curious to me that well, it shouldn't be. I mean, so much of what I mean, we've talked on this podcast before. You know, when Obama was elected, I was so excited. We're going to close down Gitmo. We're going to stop these, bombings. And it's going to be peace, love, and happiness.
it's
And no,
beautiful.
let's just expand on all our war powers and expand the Patriot Act, expand the surveillance state. It's like what?
Yeah, that was heartbreaking for a lot of people. It really was. And
Yeah.
we
So this
laughed,
one,
but that was a hard lesson for people to learn.
and this one may just be look. I mean, even Bill Ackman. I mean, like that guy was, huge Wall Street guy, came out and supported Trump. And everybody was just all over him for the whole election, and then gets in and Trump does this tariff thing, and it just doesn't. He's like, yeah, I guess maybe I was hoodwinked there. Like, what can he say? I mean, that did not bode well for. And again, it's all about like his. My key thing here is not like, again, it's not the tariff policy. It's not any of that stuff. It's like, look, if you had a if you had a constitutional process that would have been generated by Congress, right? Because I mean, a tariff is by definition a tax, and Congress is the branch of government that has the ability to tax, not the executive branch.
Right.
And the only reason the president has the authority to do this is because of these emergencies that he's declared. And so, I
Trade
think
emergency.
right. And so I'd be interested to see. It was interesting when the Supreme Court decided this case last week about the
The deportation
deportations,
case? Yeah.
saying that they could proceed, but they had to show probable cause. They had to have what do you call it? Due process.
Yep.
You can't just deport these people without due process. So of course Trump comes out, declares it a win. Of course,
Yep.
but that's not a win per se. That it's a win for the other side too, because the other side, the big problem is not, again, it's not, if people are saying on the right wing media, oh, these liberals are trying to, they want terrorists to stay in the country and they want to defend these rapists and stuff. Dude, nobody wants gang members, nobody wants rape, but we do think that due process is a real thing that should be, I mean, the due process is fine until it doesn't apply to you either, right? And then you're like, oh, geez, it's like that
I
old
kind of
poem.
wanted that due process.
Yeah, they came for they came for them, and I didn't care because it wasn't me. And at the end, they came for me, and there was nobody left. What's that poem? But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's like, dude, I mean, so that was good, but they sidestepped the question of did he have the authority to declare the emergency in the first place? They did not address that, and I wonder if there is a reluctance because
Well,
somebody
but
had
he
said,
does. That's the problem with all this, is that he does have the authority to declare that emergency.
well, he's claiming he has the
No,
authority.
no,
Well,
no. It's written in the law that it's without judicial review. Like, he 100% has the authority to declare that emergency. And that's the issue, right? Is that if you don't like that, you have to actually change the law.
well, no, you could declare that the law is unconstitutional. You could say, look, yes, they
Oh,
wrote the law, but
sure.
but according to the Constitution, only Congress can declare war, and he does not have the authority to just declare willy nilly an emergency. Otherwise, every president that came along would just declare, oh, and we're still under a state of emergency, and therefore Congress has no power, and I can do whatever I want.
That's kind of what's been going on since Bush, to be totally frank with you. Like, that's if you just
Not well. I mean,
not to
not
this
to this
scale,
extent.
but
Yeah.
that's the thing, is every president since has increased the scale.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it's like, now it's just like, but not this. Oh no, we're living under emergency powers. Like, we've been living under emergency powers for the last 24 years.
Well, and it was interesting in that Ezra Klein interview that you were talking about, and he made the point. He's like, look, I mean, if the emergency, because a lot of times states will get around this stuff by declaring an emergency. Like in California, you had the fires, and so they declared an emergency, suspended all the regulations, and we're just issuing permits. Federal government said, hey, Trump said, look, we'll suspend ours. You
Yep.
suspend yours. Let's get
Yep.
these guys permits so they can rebuild. And
Great.
people, and again, goes to the voters, right? It's like, look, the voters want that. The voters don't like, in general, red tape, right? And
Right.
bureaucracies, by definition, thrive on red tape. That's what they need. And so it's like, I think the more I look at this, it's like, and Klein said, well, if the emergency quote process works better, then why don't we just declare a permanent emergency and do away with, and
Or
that's the
basically enshrine the
as the
emergency
new way
powers
of
as
doing
the
things.
standard method. Like if it really is better, and if we're able to work under it for years at a time, then just
Well, and
baptize it
exactly,
as the normal and move on.
exactly, and it's like, well, okay, as a if I step outside of the time that I'm living in and just look at it as if I'm reading a history book, let's say, right?
Mhm.
And you can be dispassionate about it because, hey, I'm not attached to any. This happened 300 years ago, and you're just kind of reading about it as a curiosity. Then it starts to be a lot easier to like make comments on stuff. It's like, well, gosh, if only they had done this, they would have avoided that, right? And if only they had done that, right? You get that
Yeah.
feeling when you look back and read history anyway. And gosh, unbeknownst to them, this and this, and if they'd only done that, then blah blah blah. Um, all of these systems are made up. We made them up. We made up the Constitution. We made up the Declaration of Independence. We made some assertions, put them on paper, and said we're willing to die for these words. And that's what it is. And
This
so
is now what we're doing.
this is now what we're doing. And so like it's like, okay, why would we? Chris Cuomo was talking about this last week. He was like, and Chris, a huge liberal guy, like a Democrat, scion of a Democrat family, whatever. He's
Mhm.
like, look, I mean, the best thing in the world would be for us to have another constitutional convention and just relook at, like, does this make sense in the time that we're living in to do things this way, right? And I think it's not so much the Constitution that's a problem. In fact, if I look at the Constitution, it's like the Constitution is actually pretty genius. The problem, and this is where I'm arriving. Well, I'm going to say it, so maybe I've arrived at it. But like where I've arrived is, it's really the administrative alphabet soup of agencies that have been created really in the last century that is well intentioned, but has not served the people well. Has not served the country well. That and in fact, if so, a lot of these things were like instituted by either some were instituted by the president. They create this, Department of Homeland Security. That was a Bush initiative, right? Department of Education, Carter initiative. We're going to create this thing. The EPA is Nixon initiative, right? So, but then you have some that were created by Congress to say, okay, well, we're going to create this or create that or whatever. That's by statute. Congress has the ability to do that. Um, it's arguable, does the president actually have the ability to? He could say, well, hey, no, I'm administering it, and so therefore I want to administer it through this agency structure that I'm going to create. Okay, well, that's a valid argument.
Well, no, but I
But
mean
even
that requires funding, and that's the thing is that without Congress's approval to make those agencies, the executive branch doesn't have the ability to even spend them. You can't even pay the people.
right,
So like there isn't a way for that to happen. This is something that both of our major parties. I mean, it started with the New Deal. Well, with Wilson, really, but
really, Wilson, yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
but I kind of went into overdrive with the New Deal, which was, I mean, genuine emergency. I mean, you
That
had
was an emergency. Yeah,
both the Great Depression, the end of World War One, and also the Dust Bowl all happened at the same time. Just like,
right,
oh man, like capitalism might be over.
right,
You know,
right.
okay, like this is an emergency. I get that, but it's ever since then we've had both of our major political parties have contributed to this as like this is now the right way to do things. Well, it's like there's this passage in Plato's Republic that I always keep going back to when he's talking about like societies that are fundamentally unwell, sick society. he says that what they'll start doing is they'll start making new laws. They'll constantly be making new laws because they'll imagine that the problem with their society is not like the psychological health or the cohesiveness or whatever, but that the problem is the laws haven't been refined well enough yet. And so they'll just constantly be making more and revising old,
That's exactly where we are. Yeah,
which is
exactly.
So
Yeah,
it's like after FDR, um, then it's like that's what everybody is involved in. It's like, oh, here's the problem. We just need more laws. It's like either they need to be real laws passed by Congress, School of Rock style, or they'll be delegated to some
the
bureau
agency
or
releases
whatever.
its new guidelines on this, and
Yeah, and
yeah,
there'll be a comment period, and it'll all be done in the up and up. Like we'll be so responsible with it, you know, but we'll solve all of our problems by just making more laws. And yeah, it's not going to work. And I think, but the thing is I don't. This is why I've said before stuff like America's doomed and stuff. Not because it's like, oh, we're not gonna be able to produce our way out of this recession or something, because I think we will. Like we're not gonna be able to make, it'll be fine as far as that goes. But we're addicted to making new laws, and until we break that addiction, I mean, it's entertaining to watch what Doge comes up with. We might see some improvements around the margins on maybe health stuff. Maybe Bobby Kennedy is able to get his vision pushed through. I don't know, right? Like there might be some improvements, but the real problem is going to remain, and I don't know how to get rid of that one without without us all sort of collectively waking up and going like, no, I mean, and as part of, I think some people have this moment when they read the Constitution for the first time, especially if they've been living in America for a while, and they're like, "There's all these stuff in there, and Congress shall make no law, right? There will be
right,
no bill of attainder. There will be no, like, there's all the stuff that you are not allowed to do as the federal
right,
government." And it's like, well, this is such a completely different mentality. I mean, even if you
yeah.
say everything that's being done now technically fits, maybe it does. Like, well, just grant you that the whole thing's constitutional. It violates the spirit of it in such a dramatic way.
I agree
That,
100%. Yeah,
but no
and
one's saying this though. No one's
no one's.
talking about this.
That's right. And I think, like, it was interesting. I was in a back and forth on Facebook the other day, and it was like, we need, one administration comes in and says you have these rights. I think the post was about abortion or whatever. It's like,
Oh yeah.
the next administration comes in and says you don't have those rights, and what we need is an administration who actually like cares about the people and gives us all the rights that we deserve. And I was like, dude, you have, uh, and I
More
was,
laws.
my first react as I started typing my comment, I had to go back and delete it because I was like, this is not going to get anywhere. But like, it was like,
Come
look,
on. I just hit send.
but I was like, gosh, like the whole point of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution was that uh, it was upending the system that existed at that day, which was your rights as a person came from the king or the monarch that you were living under. Your monarch was a good monarch. He was good. He liked people. He gave you a lot of rights, right? And then, oh, this next monarch was an asshole. He took your rights away, right? Whatever it was, right? And it was like, no, dude, you don't have any authority to give me a right. Like I have a right because I'm a human being. And in fact, as human beings, we're getting together and saying that uh, we give the government the right to do things, not the other way around, right? Which was radical at the time. Like, I mean, that's unheard of, And ironically, like I think today, I'm like, maybe it's just as radical today because the way people act is like, oh, they're waiting for the government to do something for them or give them some right or whatever it is, and it's like, dude, this is it's literally up to the people, and Congress is so delinquent, man. The reason that Congress's approval ratings are so low is because they cannot. And the thing is, people come to Congress and they're like, oh, whatever. Chip Roy is one of my favorite Congress people. He's here in Texas, not because I agree with, but I mean, he's
He
up
does
there
speak
just
his mind.
he
We do
speaks
like
his
that.
mind. We've done nothing, and he's just a fire. But the thing is that they don't. It's like, look, your job in Congress is to build consensus. Like that is literally your job. Like nothing happens unless you have the votes. So if the key thing, it's just like being, look, if you're the governor, your job is to execute for the people, right?
Hmm.
Keep the streets clean, keep the manage the population. No, don't let buildings burn dead to the ground, right? Like, I mean, your job is to just keep the trains moving on time. That's your job, right? In Congress, your job is to build consensus. If you can't build consensus, you can't do anything. And these people have no interest in building any consensus, not even within their own party. They can't build consensus. Like Trump's talking to these guys to pass it, the tax cut or whatever, make his cuts permanent. And he's like having to browbeat these people in his own party. Like, like, this is, and I mean, I don't know. We'll see if he's successful at it or not. But I mean, like, and there's no effort whatsoever to reach across the aisle and say, like, what are things that we can, and frankly, I mean, at some point, I mean, I'm not in Congress. Maybe if I was in Congress I would show up all bright eyed and bushy tailed. Let's make friends, get shit
Let's
done, and
solve things.
solve the problems. And and maybe after like 10 years and 5 election cycles or whatever, you're just like, these people are awful, and I just can't stand it anymore. And I mean, maybe that's where you get, and okay, in that case, then what? If the system isn't working, then at some point you have to re-examine the system. Like this is I just don't. It's very it's funny, you talk about the Constitution, like Congress shall make no law and all this other stuff. The whole idea was like, dude, just like you should have the government should have as little power as possible. Let people do their thing. Let people do their thing. They have these rights, God-given rights. You have the Bill of Rights, right? And then you have the Constitution, your state government. The state governments are the ones that had all the power back in the day,
Yeah.
and the federal government had very little. And so I think to the extent that I see an effort for states to get their rights back, which you do see that as a common thread in this administration, is no, let's push that back to the states, push it back to the states, and in some cases it's been detrimental, I think, for some groups of people, and in other cases I think it's been very good for other groups of people. In general, I'm a fan of that. In general,
Mhm.
whether it's education, schools, anything else, it's like, look, I mean, you pay taxes in your state. You have way more access to your representatives in your state.
Yeah.
They should be making more of the policies that you're
Well,
having to live under.
and
But
and states have legitimately, I mean, both of us have traveled all over the country. We've lived in different parts of the country. States have legitimately different cultures
yeah,
and it's like, hey, a lot of laws are made up. It's not
no,
like
all laws are made up.
right. Well, but it's like some of them kind of flow directly, like okay, a prohibition on stealing. Like it's really hard to live your life if your stuff can just get taken from you. So it's like,
Sure.
okay,
Yep.
but a lot of it really is kind of up to the local tastes as to like how this should be done
Well, and
and
I think it
let it
was
happen
interesting.
that way.
I, I was reading something the other day. There's a graph. I need to find it. But it was a graph that showed the number of small businesses. Like, so how many? It was something like how many small businesses that are capitalized under $10 million were started in the last 3 years, whatever, from scratch, right? Like not spun off
Somebody in
from
their
some large.
basement or something. Or
Correct,
yeah.
some startup company, right?
Okay.
And it was a comparison of the United States versus the EU,
Okay.
and and dude, the United States, dude, it was just they had, it was like those circle graphs, where you got like some here, and it was just this splash of circles, right? And then in the EU, you had this tiny little cluster, you know,
Yeah.
and you're like, uh, why is that so different, right? Like, what about the culture here versus the culture there, the laws here versus the laws there, et cetera? What is it, And I've heard all these different theories of, you know,
Well, it's
um,
it's like the it's like what George W. Bush said. There's no word in French for entrepreneur.
That's right. The French don't even have a word for entrepreneur except the word entrepreneur.
Entrepreneur is French.
Freaking Bush, dude. I love that guy.
You miss him. It's like he's gone long enough that you're like, it
I
wasn't
was
so
like,
bad.
dude, I, you know, I was all about George Bush spending some time in a gulag for being a war criminal, but he's okay,
Oh,
man. He's
it's
funny.
it's
He's
like
a
my
funny guy.
Republican
He's a
friends.
funny guy.
It's like my Republican friends when Bill Clinton left office, and I was like, "You're gonna miss him. Like, it's not gonna be tomorrow. It's not gonna be next week. It's gonna be years from now.
Well,
But you'll
dude,
be
I
like,
mean, like,
that wasn't that bad. I'll take
but
another run of that."
right, right. But it's like, dude, I mean, like, I kind of missed Trump when he was gone the first time. It's like not because I liked him the first time, but I was like, bro, at least that guy was alive and had some jokes.
Yeah,
This
he
guy's
could like walk
dead
around
and
and
in a
answer questions.
basement, fucking weekend at Bernie's. What's going on?
He wasn't shaking hands with the air.
President Roomba. Oh man, I was watching Breaking Points the other day, and yeah, Mitt Romney. Robbie
Yeah,
just said Mitt Romney. Yeah,
what's
missed
wrong
that
with
guy.
that guy? He was okay.
He was fine, except for his binders full of women. Right, he had binders full of women, and that was
Yeah, that's what he
I
wants
got
to do.
binders full of women.
You heard it. He wants to bind women.
He wants to put you in a binder. Yeah.
Yep, that's what he wants.
Oh my god, I was watching. Do you ever watch Breaking Points, that podcast? I got to give a shout out to Breaking Points. So it's a decent podcast. It's not the best, not the worst, but they get one person on there is he's real conservative. The other one's like real liberal, and but it's like a thoughtful. It's not like you remember Crossfire, Tucker Carlson, and who was the other guy that was on there, and they would just yell at each other for an hour.
Sure.
These guys are much more thoughtful, and they're much more considerate of each other's positions. It's like, well, the way I see it, it's good. It's usually really good conversation on there. But the girl on there is a liberal. I can't. And she was like, and when the tariffs came out, and of course the market started creating this about a week, 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago. And she was like, well, I'm so glad we could say retarded again because these policies are retarded. And I was like,
It used to be on the list of stuff you can't say.
Yeah.
Now you can say.
Wow, see, it's fun for everyone. Yeah. I remember saying, this was maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I was in the group thread, and I said something like, "Oh, you know what we need to do? We need to get on a separate. The five of us need to get on a separate thread and have and powwow about this." And it was like, powwow. I can't believe you would say that. It's so culturally inappropriate. The Native Americans, whatever. I'm like, well, they would powwow, right? I mean, that's all I'm saying is like, let's do what the Native Americans did, maybe even with a pipe.
Yeah, I think it's inspiring.
Yeah,
we'll pass the pipe around. Who knows what's in it?
Yeah, that's a really good observation, man. Like just the Plato, the laws. Yeah, we just need more laws. That's interesting. What else does Plato have to say for us, bro? Like, let's do some philosophy here.
Dude, you need the Republic is full of all the worst and the best ideas about government all in one place. It's so amazing to read.
And for people watching this who may not want to read Plato, you could also ask ChatGPT for a summary, and it would walk you through it pretty well, right?
It actually does a pretty good job.
I mean, better than not knowing anything about it.
No, ChatGPT does a nice job with Plato's work. No, it's read it all. It knows.
It's read it all. And
there's one other thing about it that in Plato that he overemphasized. Aristotle actually calls him out for it. It's like, yeah, this is good, but you're taking it to a completely ridiculous degree. But so Aristotle sees it as kind of like a balance where you've got sort of two extremes that you can do. This is usually the way Aristotle thinks about stuff, right? It's like you've got on one extreme, you have just 100% individualism. People walk around, feel like an island to themselves. They have nothing in common with the people around them. They don't have a common language. Like you and your neighbor might just as easily kill each other because you don't understand what the other person's saying, And then you've got the other extreme, and he says this is where Plato goes, where he wants the society to be so unified that we don't even know, and this is true, actually, the way Plato thinks about it, we don't even know who our parents are. We've all been taken away from them at birth and then raised communally so that we all see each other as brothers and sisters. So everybody roughly your age is your brother or sister. All the people that are about 20 years older than you just call dad or mom. And it's like in the same way that like you would, and he's thinking about it like Plato's thinking about like this would be amazing, like because we would all look at each other in our society and would say, "Mine, you're mine,"
Mm-hmm.
And so like
we belong to each other.
We belong to each other. Yeah,
the true communalism at its best. Yeah.
And so Aristotle says this is way too far. You don't want this. Like, there's such a if you're in a choir, okay, you've got the soloist, we know that, and you've got people singing in harmony. That's cool. But you're talking about there's no even harmony. There's just unison. Everyone's just singing the same note. And it's like you
Yeah,
just sort of
over and over
destroy.
again.
You
We don't need
destroy.
different notes.
Yeah, it's like no, 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 no. We do. We do need the different notes. We need families. We need all this other stuff. But the key insight, which Aristotle agrees with, is that we need to be able to look at each other and say, "You're mine." You know,
Mm,
that like to, and so this is a fun thing to practice. I try practicing this whenever I'm commuting and in traffic. Is to say while I'm driving, it's like we're all doing rush hour together.
mhm.
Right? So like these people around me are not like my enemies or competitors. It's like we're
We're getting this done together. Yeah,
we're all doing it
because
together.
because we all have to move these cars through here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's our job is to move all these cars into this through this pipeline. And so it's like, oh, this person needs to exit. Well, I need to make sure that he has a space because we're all
Mhm.
doing rush hour together.
We're all in it together.
Yeah.
I think it's really good when you're on a just not. I didn't have that thought because I didn't know that one, but I was riding my motorcycle the other day, and in California, they have a law where you can split lanes, meaning you can ride on the lines between the cars. The
It's
lanes are just a
expected.
little bit. It's expected. They want you to do it. The reason they want you to do it in California is because it's like, look, the more cars we have on the road, the worse it is for the environment, obviously. So we want to, like, if you're a motorcycle and you can get where you're going, well, that's better carbon output, et cetera. It's also better because you're not taking up a spot in the lane. So like that means we can, extrapolate that out over a million cars. That's let's say 100,000 spots, 10,000, 50,000 spots that we can get more traffic
Mhm.
through here if the motorcycles can do their thing.
It's like adding a
The
lane for free.
Right. And now in Texas, now some states have laws against it, some states have laws for it, et cetera. Texas is unique in the sense that, as so many things, we don't have a law about it at all. So it's neither legal nor illegal. It's just not. It's not a thing. It's not. There is no line splitting in the law. So
Right.
therefore, some cops will pull you over,
Yeah.
some cops will not. And if you have a lawyer, you can go and usually get the case thrown out because it's not against the law. It is not against the law to split lanes on a motorcycle.
Well, so here's the way it actually reads. Every vehicle must be in a lane, and the motorcycle is classified as a vehicle. So even though it's not saying lane splitting is against the law. It's not saying lane splitting is for the law. It's just the way the calculus works is this a vehicle? Yes. Is it in a lane? No. Violation.
Mm, hmm
But a lot of times
hmm
you can't get it thrown out.
Yeah,
So
but well, it was interesting because I split some lanes the other day. So I was in rush hour traffic and I split some lanes. And uh, in Texas, people they get really upset with you. A lot
yeah,
of people,
because you're
uh,
cheating.
be- because you're cheating. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And so the mentality is totally different. It's like no, we're not in this together. You have to wait your turn. I have to wait my turn. Therefore, you have to wait your turn. And so no, I literally would have like this one like literally got over into the shoulder to try to block me, and then of course I
Mhm.
just went this way and got around him. And he laid on his horn.
Yep.
I was 10, 15 cars ahead, and he was still honking that horn
Oh yeah.
like somebody stop that guy. Like I had snatched
He
somebody's purse or something. You know,
he cut in line. He
he cut
cut in
cut
line.
in line. Yeah. And it's interesting because it is so like, dude, it actually helps you for me to cut in this scenario.
Yeah.
And it doesn't affect you in any way other than to literally allow your car to get a little bit further ahead than it would have been. And yet that's not the mentality. So I think it's interesting that when you're talking about different states and states laws, like the culture of, and by the way, it is a cultural thing. And I mean, I could sit here and say, look, your mentality is stupid, which mathematically it is not optimal. That's all you can say
Yes.
factually about it. It's not that it's stupid because hey, what are we teaching our kids? And is it just okay for everybody to bust a light, right? Like, oh, so let you do it now, everybody's gonna do it. And there is that kind of thing where it's like, okay, well, is there something valuable here to extract? And is it okay for this state to do things differently? Like, I have no problem personally. I have no problem with the fact that, say, Oregon wants to have massively pro trans friendly legislation or euthanasia or any of the things that they have going on in Oregon. It's like,
It's their
are
business.
they? that's their. I don't live in Oregon. It's fine. And if I was living in Oregon and they were passing all these laws and they personally offended me, it's not a big deal. I'll just move to California or Utah or whatever, some other place.
Or lobby against them and
Or yeah, right.
collectively, do some action or something. Yeah.
But I think it's a big difference in America. It's just a big difference in terms of like going back to the European thing. It's so much easier for me to think about moving from Texas to Florida or moving to New York or moving out of New York or whatever. People did, especially during the pandemic. You had so many people like, oh, let me get out of the country and go buy this house and this farmland because now I can work from anywhere and it's going to be great.
And like, why? The laws are better over there.
The laws are better over there. The taxes are better. It's okay. Like, in fact, we encourage that. Like, go do that, right? But in Europe, even though we're in the EU, and even though it's not that big of a deal for me to move from Germany to France or whatever, well, actually it's a big deal, man, because I have to live around French people. I have to learn how to speak French.
You gotta eat French food.
They don't have the sausage that I want. Yeah, right. It's like
their beer is weird.
Their beer is weird.
I'm not gonna go for there.
Carlsberg's okay. I could drink some Carlsberg. I'm gonna put that away.
Wait, Carlsberg's not French. Carlsberg is Danish.
Oh, is it? Oh, it's really popular in France. So.
Oh, yeah, Carlsberg's delicious.
Yeah, I love Carlsberg. Yeah. That was my first experience with Carlsberg, was in France.
In France?
I always thought it was like Berg. It sounds like German, but Danish, huh?
Yeah.
Those Danes, man. Those Danes are smart.
But,
they got it figured out.
Now that I've said that, I'm gonna look it up because someone is gonna be like, "No, that's wrong."
I don't know anything about beer. Well, I'll tell you something for the rest of the audience. If anybody does know anything about beer,
it is Danish. Yes. It is Danish.
Russell.
I win.
I don't argue with him about beer. I don't know. I don't know. I just
he says it. I mean, what else? Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, dude. One last thing, maybe topic, if you're down for it. What do you think about Kash Patel here? So Kash Patel, just to frame the question, very controversial pick, right? Enemies in the FBI, enemies list. We're gonna go get all these people, criminals. We have documented evidence of blah blah blah, and yet no charges brought against anybody since he's been in there. And just yesterday, they took the ATF out of his control, which was kind of interesting. I don't know if I saw that one, but
so
what is happening?
Okay,
where are the enemies? Bring them out of there.
So I have no knowledge about him personally. I'm not someone that's followed his career, so I can't say anything about that. As far as the ATF being taken away, the ATF is a big job all on its own. His title was always interim, so I don't see what so they handed it to someone else who's actually has time to work on it. I don't know. It just doesn't seem that crazy to me. Like, I don't like, he wasn't nominated.
That's a distraction to the actual question is, where are these enemies? Like, were you grandstanding either you were grandstanding the whole time and you don't have any of this evidence you're talking about, or you're protecting those people somehow, or quietly firing them because we don't want to expose. Like, so what's going on here?
So that I don't know. So I'm assuming, and this is just from some discussions that I've had with our younger brother who's in law enforcement and has to wind up doing like investigative stuff for corruption and all that. These cases take a long time to put together. So even if it was like an expedited case, I'm not expecting to see anything for like 3 or 4 months on that stuff if it's real. Now, if it's just grandstanding, which it very very well might be, I don't know, then obviously nothing's going to happen. But if it's real, then yeah, I would say if you don't hear anything by summer, or if you don't see things like tracking stuff where it's like you might wind up, and this would be kind of bad for the brand, but you might see where it's like, okay, they seem to have lost X number of employees. It's like strangely like 7,000 FBI employees are no longer there. And because of NDAs and because of, it's like, in order to get them out now, we don't go and, pillory their name in the newspapers as a condition for them just leaving. And so we wind up getting like an expose of it, or a book is written about it later, or something like that. That would be terrible for the brand, because I think they need this administration loves its big splashy
Well, and
headlines.
frankly,
They
to
love
support the narrative they put out there, I mean, first of all, it's a compelling narrative and make for a great Hollywood movie. So if it's true,
What is the narrative? What is
then
the enemies list thing?
well, just the narrative is, of course, that the FBI has been taken over by, so the FBI, the Justice Department, and all the wheels of government have been taken over by liberals, and they are actively trying to put Christians in jail and harass people of faith, and of course all the Republicans, and they put Donald Trump on, they spied on his campaign, all the different things that they've been alleging.
Well, all that's
Uh,
true. That's all
Okay,
documented.
so his whole thing was, I'm going to go in there and we're going to hold these people accountable for what they did.
Okay.
And so like if all that's been documented, as you say, then where are the charges? Where are the AG
Oh, well, because
report?
so my guess here as a non-lawyer is that none of that was illegal. That it is actually legal in this country to spy on your opposition, to engage in
Okay,
lawfare with the
so then
government.
that's not criminal activity then. So what's the problem?
Well, the problem is that it's like extremely unethical, and we don't want our government doing stuff like that. And I would want anybody that was involved in those kinds of things, from whichever side they're involved in. I mean, they should not be working there. They should not be prosecutors if they're using it for political purposes. So,
So here's the only reason I would take the opposite point of view. I agree with you in principle. Uh, Absolutely. However, during the Mueller report, when they came out with all the evidence of the Trump obstruction of justice and all the different things, I mean, it clearly outlined in the report,
mhm,
and it was like, well, none of these things are criminal. That was the argument in reverse the last time. It's like, well, look, all these things are unethical, never been done before, unprecedented, shouldn't have happened. They need to be held accountable. And the defense was, well, no, it's not illegal. They didn't break any. Where's the criminality? Did they break any laws? Well, then what's the problem? And so
mhm.
now all of a sudden it is a problem if it's done in reverse. It's like, I don't
Well,
know.
that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know the argument. I haven't heard anything. From what I can tell, there's been no movement on any of that stuff. Right? Am I right about that?
So, yeah, no, I
At
haven't
least
seen.
the public.
That's my whole
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. My guess is either that it just takes time to put together these cases, and even if they're expedited, I would say summer would be the earliest we'd see anything about like people actually getting arrested, or having like the midnight dawn raid where like they
I
smash
want
down
to
the
see
doors with like
people with
records.
bags over their heads, pulled out of their
Yeah.
houses,
Well, and some of that
put
stuff
in the
may
stockade.
that kind of stuff may happen. I mean, if you think about how many people got voted in to go get Trump, like literally that was their campaign, go get Trump. I mean, the guy in New York, what's his name? The short guy. I can't think of his name now. But the one that turned the records case into a felony, the one that actually got the felony, Alan Bragg.
Oh yeah, brag. Yeah,
Right. He
yeah.
campaigned on getting Trump, and it took him months once he was in office to actually
To
put
come up with a
together the
legal
case.
theory that would
Yeah.
work. Yeah.
So it's like, so I'm not expecting something within the first couple of weeks, unless it is, of course, this whole thing of like we're calling people in the office and telling them we're reassigning you to some place in Antarctica, but you're free to leave of your own accord if you want. Like that stuff
my
may be going on, but
my suspicion is it's a lot harder to. It's a lot easier to stand outside and shake your fist and make up allegations than it is to actually get things to stick. It's interesting because
that's probably true.
depending on your depending on your point of view, you know, um, people who typically defend Trump in terms of the legal standpoint are like, well, look, man, there's so many laws on the books that you can literally like everybody's a felon. They just haven't been charged with their crime yet.
Right, right.
You violated something, and so okay, well, in that case, it should be really easy to line up all the
Hmm.
felonies on these people and get them out. On the
Yeah.
other hand, if it's like well, actually, no. You have to actually prove some criminality. There have to be different things that happen here, and the courts have processes, and a lot of times they lean towards the
Yeah.
defendant.
So I think
Um,
one of the options that they could do, and I don't know what you think about this, but some of the stuff that's been going on with against the Trump team from 2016 and the 2020 stuff has been make the process so painful that it kind of doesn't matter if you're innocent, right? Like you'll run out of money trying to defend yourself, and you'll eventually, cop a guilty plea to something, and so then they can come back and say they got their convictions and so on. So, if you have something like that, and you say, well, all right, we can go after these people that way because it doesn't matter if they've done anything. It doesn't even matter if this is the right law to do it on, because the indictment is itself kind of a pretext for punishing them through the application of the legal system itself. The thing is, I find that to be extremely distasteful. So if they've within the system said, hey, we could start kicking down doors now and just sort of terrorizing people as payback,
Well,
and it doesn't
well,
matter if anything
well,
sticks or
that's what
not.
that was what I was going to say. Is they're kind of in between a rock and a hard place in the sense that, like, so Robbie just commented here. He says, read the judge's decision in the New York records case. The evidence of false filings is pretty obvious. I agree. So he did falsify those records, right? So the question is, okay, what is that, right? Is that a misdemeanor or a felony, right? Uh, and then in what cases are cases like that brought against people in the course of the regular course of business, right? Now, in Trump's particular case, um, most most real estate developers do this. Like that they're all hyperinflating the value of their properties and whatever. Now, maybe he was an egregious whatever. I may make that case, but the fact is that where is the harm in the crime, right? Like who was harmed? The people that ostensibly would have been harmed would have been the banks who loaned him all this money for these inflated values. They would be the people harmed, right?
They said they weren't harmed.
They said they weren't harmed at all. In fact, they got all their money back plus some. They would do business with them again. So where is the problem that the state now sees an interest in prosecuting this individual? If this individual's name was Bill Clinton or Barack Obama or whoever, right? Nobody would have ever prosecuted that crime, so to speak, right? So, uh, I mean, and I think most people, you could take, you're free to take the opposite stance, and that's fine. A lot of people do, right? I just, for the average person reading that, it's like, okay, wait a minute. So in order to make this a felony, you had to then tap into you had to, you had to upcharge it because you had to compound it with this other crime. And it's like, people are like, wait a minute. So this is really just a misdemeanor. And wait a minute, everybody really does it. Oh, and wait a minute, the banks got all their money back and nobody cares and everybody would do business with them again. So where's the freaking crime? What's going on here? And, you know, so if the Republicans now, Cash Patel, Pam Bondi, et cetera, start pursuing, these,
Same kind of
convoluted cases, trying to okay, here's the felony sequence we're going to do with this person, then
time to
I
go
think
after
they're,
Chuck Schumer. Schumer's going
yeah.
down.
So I feel like on one level, I'm kind of glad that there hasn't been any of that, because I would have thought right after he got confirmed that it would have been like open season, like, because and the fact that it hasn't been is actually, the crime is lying to the state. Are we saying that lying is okay because everybody? Again, man, lying about what? About
Yeah, I mean, it's like imagine someone. This is kind of an extreme example, but in my city, everybody speeds between 5 and 15 miles an hour over the speed limit. Let's say you pull someone who's speeding 10 miles over the speed limit, and you decide you're going to make an example of this guy. So, or you realize it's like you look at his license plate and you're like, oh, he's a Corvette driver. I don't like him. So then, well, it turns out you can arrest someone for speeding. You can take them to jail. You can do all sorts of stuff. You can toss their car. You can look at all. You can impound it. You can do all these things. And you'd be like, hey, this speeding ticket, which normally maybe would have given you a warning half the time, and even if you did have the ticket, you could get rid of it with defensive driving. Now your car has to be repaired because the tow guy that came to impound it scratched up the side and everything else. And hey, we're just following the law and all this other stuff. It's like, well, at some point, it's that you can beat the, what is it? You can beat the rap, but you can't beat the ride. Like the process itself is part of the
right,
punishment.
right.
It's like,
Right.
spend the night in jail, explain it to your family, or hey, you're not going to be able to go to work tomorrow morning because you're in jail. Like people are going to lose their jobs over that kind of stuff, and we can do that to you. If we decide we don't like you, and that's basically what happened. So yeah, did the person break the law by speeding? Absolutely. Is that punishment
Well,
the
and
correct
also,
punishment
and,
for that?
and and also it's literally like assigning a value to real estate property. It's like, okay, because in the reverse, I mean, how many people lie on their federal income tax statements by saying that they use these 762 square feet in their house as an office, and that's all I use it for. My kids don't play in there. I've never had a poker game in there. All the, I mean, come on. At some point, you're like,
What's in the
what
closet?
level of it?
You stored your winter
What's
clothes
in
in
the
there?
right? It's not 762 feet. It's blah, blah, blah. You counted your balcony, which is not even attached to that room, and da, da, da. It's like, dude, these are that level of criminality is not something we need to rush to stamp out and throw, an ex-president in jail over. I mean,
32 felonies.
it's ridiculous to most people. To most people. And I'm not. This is not coming from a Trump fan. This is just, come on, man. You lost the plot on that one. Okay, yeah, slippery slope. But I mean, again, which even regular citizens do we prosecute for this? Right. And so it's like, you don't get any consideration as an ex-president. Oh no, but in fact, because you're an ex-president that we don't like, we're actually, you deserve this even more. I don't know. It's just,
I mean,
and hey, we may just disagree on it, but
yeah.
I mean,
The number of times where I've made mistakes on forms, like even the IRS, like I messed up my taxes one year and filed something the wrong way, and they came back with a letter and said, "Hey, you need to pay us this, and also we're charging you interest because you should have paid it last month when you when you filed your taxes." And I was like, "Crap! Could they have arrested me for it?" Yeah,
yeah, you lied on a
I
federal
lied.
court.
I lied, and
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
we're gonna get every expert. We're gonna comb through everything to find out if that lie was intentional. And now my computer is being taken over by a bunch of forensic side, which who knows what else they found. It's like, oh my gosh, there's this MP3 that he copied. Right? That's copyright infringement, And it's like, I mean, at some point, like you could try to turn whatever into a giant crime. But
I'm just
anyway,
saying. Yeah,
I
exactly.
I just
Yeah.
think my thing is, personally, the fact that nothing has happened like that, I take to be good news. Although
Me
I'm
too.
pretty sure that my friends on far right social media are kind of like, "Where are the arrests?" kind of thing.
Well,
I,
there is a lot, and
I'm pretty
that's
sure.
what I was gonna say is that there's a lot of people, especially with the Epstein drop, which was nothing, and it's like,
Mhm.
who are you protecting? Why do we still not know what this stuff is? Right? Like, so interesting that the people that were so eager to get this stuff out there, we know all this stuff. We're gonna expose all these people. It's like, well, actually, we don't want to expose these people. These are our friends. Uh, yeah,
Well,
I don't know.
yeah, and I having read a little bit about the Epstein file stuff, like the most likely story for that is that he was an agent of the government, or and if not this government, another one that we're allied with, who knows which. Um, and all the stuff with the island and the drugs and everything were not blackmail, but they were providing services. So, in the same way that like CIA operatives overseas throw some pretty wild parties, not because they're
Well,
trying to blackmail you, but because it's like, this is where the
well,
good stuff is.
no, but they'll blackmail you later. The
They
whole thing
might.
with the whole
They
thing with
might.
blackmail is the way that it shows up is not usually the way it is in the movies. It's usually a friend, right? It's a friend saying, "Hey, let me help you out of this jam." Oh man, this is terrible. You know what? I'll tell you what. Let me make a couple of calls. We'll make this go away, right? And what you're setting
Now you're
yourself up for
grateful.
then is not yeah, exactly. And it's like it's very rare that somebody would have to say, "Hey, you remember the thing with the guy in the place? You owe
Right.
us one." It's just no.
Right.
Hey, I'm going to need a favor on this, and it's just unspoken, and there it is. It's not blackmail per se. It's
Yeah.
friends helping each
That,
other out. You know.
but that's what I'm saying. Like it from the amount of years that he was doing this, that it's very likely he was an extremely deft and soft touch at this kind of thing, where he was able to have influence and favors flow through him as a conduit. And some of those influence and favors include stuff that would be illegal, but some illegal pleasures that you might have thought would have been off the table, but not for my friends, kind of thing.
Not for my friends. That's
Not for
right.
my friends. And
Not.
so,
Yep.
you know, um, nobody that's in positions of power wants that exposed, because everybody's gonna be on the list, man. If not for that stuff, but for other stuff, like because that's the thing is he was like a little conduit, like a little pipeline, and so yeah, okay, the pedo stuff that would be really embarrassing, but it could be other things too. that could be just as embarrassing, or not even embarrassing at all, but just being connected to like that pipeline, is enough to mess with. So it's like that stuff is not going to come out. Like, it's just not. There'll be
Yep.
exposés written 30, 40 years from now. We'll be too old to read it. We'll be in our nursing homes. We'll be like, did you see this
Did you?
garbage?
Well, what did you think of the JFK files that very clearly show like Oswald was a CIA asset for, I mean, years and years. They knew exactly who he was, had their eye on him the entire time, knew what was up.
Yeah, and he himself said publicly that he didn't do it, that he was a
Yeah,
patsy. He
I'm
was
a patsy.
patsy. They're setting me up for this, and probably true. And so, I mean, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, the government is so dirty. It's at this point we're like, hey, we found
Makes
out.
me want to go back and watch JFK again and
Well,
see that
but
Oliver Stone movie.
it's I just keep coming back to this when I tell people, like, oh, the movie, you need to go back. The movies that really have not aged well. You might think because like bad special effects from the last Starfighter or something. It's like, no. The movies that really didn't age well are the Bourne films. because they're like doing all this stuff to keep it undercover that the government is spying on you. We're like,
Yeah, enemy of the state.
we
Yeah,
already know, or it's like,
yeah,
oh
we
my
know.
gosh, we have to silence Bourne because it turns out the United States is in bed with terrorist organizations to do assassinations in other parts of the world. And you're like,
Big, yeah. Where's the headline
that,
there?
that's just on CNN, bro. Like, everybody
it,
knows.
it just
Nobody
reminds
cares.
me of that scene in
We
in
got
the
Dodson.
Godfather.
We got Dodson
We got
here.
Dodson here. Dodson's here. It reminds me of that scene in the very first Godfather when he's walking with Kate or whatever, and trying to get her Kay to come back, and she's like, he's my father's just like any other important man, president, senators, who has to take, he's responsible for people. He's got to make decisions, and she's like, oh, Michael, you sound so naive. Presidents and congressmen don't have people killed, and he just looks at her and is like, who's being naive, Kate?
Like, what? They don't? What?
Who's being naive, Kate? Get in the car. Yeah.
Uh,
Oh man. Well, dude, another. We have anything else to discuss before we put it on ice for next week?
we do, but we should put it on ice anyway. We can't wear
All
out our
right.
audience.
Ice it out. All right. Cheers. Thanks for tuning in.